Hey yo, what is going on, viewers of the tube? My name is Tyler and welcome to the channel that brings you that crazy crypto mumbo jumbo with swift and speed. But at the end of our content, you get the full picture, kind of like Tara Wheeler in front of Congress the other day.
I'm a cybersecurity policy fellow with New America. I started in computers by building Pentium machines after school for my stepdad's computer repair company. I have been a Linux systems administrator, an architect for secure systems, a senior cybersecurity executive at two large publicly traded security corporations, and I am an offensive information security researcher. That's how you pronounce hacker when you're testifying in front of a legislative committee.
You know our hack jobs. It's time for Chico Crypto. Well, I said I was going to do it last week in one of my worst performing videos over the past month, yet it is the most important. YouTube loves to censor the good stuff. But that video was showing how two major exchanges, Chinese founded, Huobi and Binance, are two of the largest recipients of illicit and illegal funds. And the research, it wasn't even put out from me. It was put together by a professional blockchain data analysis firm, Chainalysis, called Money Laundering in Cryptocurrency, How Criminals Moved Billions in 2019. And the data, it directly zeroed in on Binance and Huobi, receiving a large majority of the illegal funds. Out of the tracked funds, Binance received over 27%, Huobi nearly 25%. And as a primer for the information I'm about to drop, I highly recommend you watch that video breakdown of the Chainalysis report. That video is in the description. But if you don't want to watch, in that video I highlighted how Chainalysis works with the US government, and I have a feeling this report was basically a warning to Binance and Huobi. Clean up your act or you're gonna get repercussions from governments across the globe. Well, old CZ Binance cried to Chainalysis after their report came out, and right after I dropped my video. Chainalysis tweeted this: "The purpose of our crypto crime research is to shine a light on illicit activity and promote the good work of law enforcement and exchanges like Binance to make our crypto safer for everyone. Our report on money laundering revealed a network of corrupt OTC brokers and was not aimed at Binance, our long-standing partner. We strongly support market leaders like Binance who use our data to improve the quality of this space for everyone." Really, Chainalysis? Come on. I showed in that video how CZ and Binance adopted your compliance tools all the way back in October of 2018. This article explains it very well. Chainalysis partners with Binance to tackle global cryptocurrency money laundering. Well, what has happened in over a year and a half? Binance is continuing to allow illicit funds to move through its exchange, and they will never stop. And now, let us take a deep dive right into why Binance, Huobi, and other crypto exchanges across the globe are indirectly or directly involved with a massive money laundering operation, which involves the Chinese Mafia, Mexican cartels, Chinese underground banking systems, and Chinese OTC crypto brokers. So let's begin with the OTC brokers, as they were named in the Chainalysis report. They called these brokers who specialize in moving illegal funds the Rogue 100. And the Rogue 100 is moving hundreds of millions of dollars, with total volumes increasing month by month since 2017. The Chainalysis report describes what the Rogue 100 does very well. The problem, however, is that while most OTC brokers run a legitimate business, some of them specialize in providing money laundering services to criminals. OTC brokers typically have a lower KYC requirement than the exchanges they operate on. Many of them take advantage of this laxity and help criminals launder and cash out funds, usually first by exchanging Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies into Tether as a stable intermediary currency before they presumably cash out into fiat, which happens in a complex web always involving more than one OTC broker. By analyzing their transactions in the Chainalysis reactor, they visualized how two corrupt OTC brokers take in funds from criminal sources. On the far left, we see funds start at a criminal entity, move through an intermediary wallet, and then move onto two OTC brokers, both of whom are on the Rogue 100 list. The OTC brokers then move the funds to Huobi, most likely to be converted to USDT. They also visualized an example of how corrupt OTC brokers frequently transact with one another, moving millions upon millions worth of BTC back and forth through each other to try and trick analysis software and hide the trail. But Tether USDT is highly important to those OTC desks as it keeps the criminal client's value stable until they are ready to cash out into fiat. Well, I wonder which exchanges have the most Tether according to the Tether rich list. Number 1, Binance. Number 2, Binance. Number 3, Huobi. Number 4, Huobi. How about we just look at the volume by currency breakdown for Binance and Huobi? 80% USDT or over for each of the exchanges, Binance being slightly worse than Huobi. Which makes sense because according to Chainalysis, they were receiving slightly more illicit funds. So the reason for these high Tether amounts on these exchanges is because these OTC desks need to keep criminal funds stable before cashing out on the fiat exchanges, another OTC desk which provides fiat services, and more. But the criminals, who are they? Well, like I mentioned, it's a cooperation between the Mexican cartels, the Chinese Mafia, with a little bit of Russian Mafia sprinkled in to liven things up. So how do I begin with this? Well, let's begin with the war on drugs here in America. After those wild 60s which loved drugs and Vietnam made up the decade, Richard Nixon decided to nip it in the bud and made an announcement to the American public in 1971. Let's listen in.
I began the meeting by making this statement, which I think needs to be made to the nation. America's public enemy number 1 in the United States is drug abuse. In order to fight and defeat this enemy, it is necessary to wage a new all-out offensive. I have asked the Congress to provide the legislative authority and the funds to fuel this kind of an offensive. This will be a worldwide offensive dealing with the problems of sources of supply as well as Americans who may be stationed abroad wherever they are in the world. It will be government-wide, pulling together the 9 different fragmented areas within the government in which this problem is now being handled. And it will be nationwide in terms of a new educational program that we trust will result from the discussions that we have had.
Yes, the war on drugs, it was launched. And I'm sure if you've watched Narcos on Netflix, you were up to date on how the Colombian cartels, including Escobar and the Medellins, supplied the US and their narcotics cravings. Then, when they were stomped out, wink wink, the Mexican cartels took over in the 80s and 90s and became the main suppliers for the US.
Well, do you know how to rap? Sure. How do you rap? Don't be lame, you can't maintain when you do cocaine. Yeah.
And those Mexican cartels are still the same suppliers to this day. Sure, the ranks changed leadership and marijuana isn't one of their larger exports due to legalization in the States, but those cartels are still getting large amounts of harder narcotics across the border, including prescriptions, heroin, fentanyl, cocaine, methamphetamine, and its analogs. Now the cartel Superlabs, where these hard narcotics are cooked and made, they need to be supplied with the base chemicals. I'm sure you remember another recent pop culture icon besides Narcos.
And if our reduction is not stereospecific, then how can our product be enantiomerically pure? I mean, is 1 phenyl, 1 hydroxy, 2 methylaminopropane, containing, of course, chiral centers at carbons number 1 and 2 on the propane chain. Then reduction to methamphetamine eliminates which chiral center is it again?
Walter White, Breaking Bad. Yeah, it's a TV show, but it's not that far from reality. Chemicals like pseudoephedrine and ephedrine are used for making Mexican ice. Yes, home labs in the US have been replaced by large Mexican superlabs who have perfected their recipes and have access to large bulk shipments of the chemicals needed, instead of having to separate it out of cold pills like Sudafed. But who is supplying the cartels with the base chemicals? China is, of course. All it takes is a simple Google search. Type in pseudoephedrine hydrochloride, China. Scroll down, and there's a Reddit post. Does anyone know if you can get pseudoephedrine HCl in China? And in the comments, super easy, with even suppliers shipping to the US. Then the US Economic Security Review Commission put out this report in 2016, Meth Precursor Chemicals from China, Implications for the United States. This piece of the executive summary paints a perfect picture of what is going on. While Mexican cartels produce the majority, around 90% of the meth used in the United States, around 80% of precursor chemicals used in Mexican meth comes from China. China. Precursor chemicals are increasingly being shipped from China to Mexico, where they are manufactured into meth, transported across the southern border of the United States and brought into southwestern states, Texas, Arizona, and California, before being shipped across the country. A period of increased cooperation between the US and Mexican governments in the late 2000s and early 2010s has done little to reduce the precursor flows, with Chinese drug traffickers circumventing counter-narcotic authorities by shipping chemicals to poorly regulated Central American ports before transporting them to Mexico. So the cartels, they're being supplied by the Chinese. How is this happening? Well, China is home to the world's second largest pharmaceutical industry by revenue, producing and exporting vast quantities of generic drugs and active pharmaceutical ingredients. And the country's vast chemical and pharmaceutical industries are weakly regulated and poorly monitored. Like everything in China, as long as it gives their citizens wealth and hurts Americans, they allow it. Well, the Chinese Mafia has taken full advantage of the weak regulations. They partner with the cartels in the West. So let's pull out a map and see how this works. Narcotic precursors are shipped from China and land in ports in Mexico and Central America. Hard narcotics are processed in the Superlabs in isolated jungles. The narcotics then make their ways to the border and are imported into the US using air, land, and sea. Once they hit the States, they are sold for cash money on the streets through a distribution web, with the bulk of that cash ending up back in the hands of the cartels. But this cash is stuck in the United States. Before Bitcoin and crypto, they had to get this cash back across the border, which resulted in large amounts of border seizures. But recently, this number has been plummeting. According to this article, Arizona ports saw a similar rise and fall with seizures, ranging from 500,000 to 1.82 million between 2005 and 2008. The next year, seizures rose to nearly 5 million and then peaked at 12.1 million in 2011. In 2016, custom officers at Arizona ports seized 960,000, a 92% drop from the peak in 2011. And just below in the article, but experts say money is still getting across the border in immense amounts. Yes, it is, and it's through cryptocurrency. Much easier to move large amounts of value over a border through a computer than with physical cash, wouldn't you say? In October of 2017, even before the mass growth of the rogue OTC crypto desk, the DEA was onto the scheme. They released a report that Bitcoin and crypto was used for trade-based money laundering schemes. In the report, they said many China-based firms manufacturing goods used in trade-based money laundering schemes now prefer to accept Bitcoin. Bitcoin is widely popular in China because it can be used to anonymously transfer value overseas, circumventing China's capital controls. The increasing use of OTC Bitcoin brokers who are capable of transferring millions of dollars in Bitcoin across international borders as part of a capital flight scheme is expected to continue to intertwine criminal money laundering networks with capital flight. In December of 2018, they put out a new report which zeroed in on the OTC brokers, how Mexican cartels use Chinese crypto brokers to launder drug money. From the article, specifically, the DEA cited the Chinese underground banking systems, CUBs, as a key laundering channel. The CUBs money brokers, the DEA noted, was turning to Bitcoin both to launder money for drug traffickers and to assist Chinese nationals interested in moving amounts exceeding the allowed annual limit of US $50,000 outside the country. Then just a few months ago, a massive fentanyl supply ring which involved many Chinese nationals was busted apart, shining a light into how the drugs were making it into the US, and how Bitcoin was used in the process. Then looky here, in August of 2019, we had some Kingpin Act designations, where 3 Chinese nationals and 2 Chinese companies were sanctioned and blacklisted, including their Bitcoin addresses. So the Chinese and their mafia, they need to fuel their empires through narcotic precursors. They have a need that the cartels fill. They buy it. The cartels, with the mass amounts of cash they receive, they have a need. They need it washed and cleaned. Here's where the Chinese CUBs come into play, and their crypto OTC brokers, aka the Rogue 100. And the Rogue 100 love using Binance and Huobi. So the doors are closing in on this scheme, and this is just a Chico Crypto high-level view of things. So much more is involved. Why do you think millions is crossing the Russia-China border daily? And with these OTC brokers, Tether is king. From the article, business is brisk thanks to a constant flow of Chinese merchants who come in daily with heavy bags of cash. Oleg said his OTC desk sells about 3 million worth of crypto every day. Don't shoot the messenger. I'm just here to show you how the crypto world works from the inside out. Cheers. I'll see you next time.